Hi everyone, I'm Matteo Collina, Platformatic co-founder and CTO, and today I'm going to walk you through the story of APIs. So let's get started. So the first thing at the beginning, before we start, a couple of things about me. You're probably using my software on NPM. I'm also on Twitter at Matteo Collina, so I don't know, check me out. That would be cool. This tells the story of APIs. So this story is not completed. So it's not complete. So if there is something in between that is missing, please forgive me. We simplified a few steps to fit in the talking in the slot. So let's start with technology. Technology is a spiral. All technologies, there's no new technologies anymore. The old technology became new technology again, just a new generation on that technology, on that flow. Okay, so in fact, it keeps spinning and spinning and spinning and improving all the time. Okay, to clarify, for example, the model view control pattern was invented by Smalltalk in the 80s. So still there. So at the beginning, especially in distributed system, there was the monolith, this mythical thing that sat in our data centers and powered the computers of that era. And in the most recent years, essentially, this was implemented in Java. And typically the programming language, not the coffee bean or the island. There is a lot of those things called Java. So how did we code web application at that time? Well, you were using Eclipse or some other IDE, and we created something called a WAR file. What is a WAR file? It's just a zip file with all the stuff bundled in, and we just uploaded that WAR file inside a folder in our application server, and that's how we deployed stuff. It was amazing, super simple. This was a power horse, okay? We could build very reliable system and get data from A to B in a very, 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 very fast way. It was also, developers could actually do all the things that they needed to do, just probably not in the most, it was not simple to develop on the stuff. For all of you in the audience that have been there, that was essentially fun times, but also, a lot of work to get the most basic pages to show up. And in fact, what we did a lot of those times where we developed web services using SOAP and WSDL, and all those standards become called as the WS star, which, to be honest, for me, looks a lot like the Death Star of the movies. So, you can make those comparisons. It takes a lot of money to build a Death Star, right? So, yeah, that's the problem. At the same time, also, we developed our UIs, building that use those services built with WSDL and SOAP using something called JSP, which Java Server Pages, which actually were server-rendered HTML. Come on. So, in this world, we deployed those systems just by using a single unit of deployment across inside the application server, and these automatically did all the load balancing, all the multi-threading for us. It was all managed, and it was all based on synchronous I/O. So this was one of the reasons why it was a little bit problematic at this time. And back in a few years later, we got REST. Wow, we have REST now. What is REST? Representational state transfer, as defined in the PhD thesis of Roy Fielding in year 2000. And more or less around the same time, Douglas Crockford started inventing and using the first transfer using JSON. So we had REST and JSON that together formed the pillar of today's APIs, and not WSDL and SOAP. And this, more or less, this approach culminated with Ruby on Rails, which, I don't know, changed my life in a lot of ways, that created this, build a blog in like 5 minutes. in 20 minutes type of thing. And it was fantastic, to be honest. I loved it. And in Ruby on Rails, the developer experience was coding. We have data as part of the model ORM that was typically auto-generated with just some command on the keyboard, and then this was then rendered via HTML and with a CRUD REST API. Was amazing. Okay, loved it. However, Ruby on Rails was fantastic. It's still one of my favorite technology. However, it's all things that have the Rails in the name or something. It's actually very simple to do the first leg of the journey. However, whenever you wanted to stray from what were the convention of Ruby on Rails for whatever business needs you had, things become way more complicated. And in fact, it was, you were a little bit fighting against the framework to some extent. So, yeah, a little bit. It's phenomenal with some caveats. So, however, more or less about the time, we got the best way to deploy to the cloud, Heroku. Fantastic, okay? It's everybody still today wants to replicate the developer experience that Heroku had at that point in time. Git push and you had your full environment setup. Was fantastic. How did it work? Well, typically at the time we had this kind of reverse proxy that ended up across multiple machines and so on. It was fantastic. And however, you know what? Any application that can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript. So even backended APIs become written in JavaScript. Well, Node.js in 2009 got first shipped, started to exist, okay? And I typically compare Node.js to a SUV, okay? It can more or less go fast very quickly from one location to another. It's not the fastest way to building things, but it can more or less go anywhere. And this is where Node.js shines. Node.js shined in building custom APIs, custom system, custom stuff. And it's super malleable, and a lot of people can actually use it to build things in all the possible ways. But what people said with Node is that you do not need anything more than just one single process or multiple processes, but no multi-threading, no VMs. You just, with asynchronous programming and the event loop, you could handle many, many, many requests per second, thousands, hundreds of thousands. Wow. Look, at some point at the beginning, a few years back, there was this big problem of the 10K problem. How do we handle 10,000 concurrent requests on a single machine? And Node.js can do that as with a breeze, okay? It's super fine, okay, for Node. Well, to some extent, but it's depends. Node can do it. Most applications built in Node, well, it requires a little bit of skills, but yeah, it's great. And because of this, we started disassembling the monolith, okay, and chunking it up. And in fact, we started building microservices. And typically with still an Nginx in front, but also a Docker plus mesh networking afterwards. And look, it is the problem with Docker, okay? And this is where I feel a little bit lost. Ultimately, it's very, very hard to use it in development, okay? Very hard. Most developers use Docker containers to spin up their infra, their database locally and so on, but they do not code in Docker. So reality is Docker images gets only, it's just the artifact that we push. And you know what a Docker image is? It's not this fantastic, impossible thing. It's just a tarball, okay? So instead of shipping the tarball with just our application, we are now shipping the tarball, which is our full mini operating system. Wow. And in the meanwhile, in the front-end universe, we started decoupling the UI from the business logic. So we started doing SPA, single-page application. We started doing mobile. So we needed APIs. And what happened is that we started having these very complex REST APIs that had encapsulated the business logic that then talked to the DB. And now HTML is not rendered anymore on the same server that does the database. We could still do server-side rendering and stuff, but typically as part of our SPA server. What happened also is that Vercel and Next.js provided the state-of-the-art developer experience for the front end. It's fantastic, okay? If you have tried this, this is amazing, so I couldn't talk anything more than this. But what about the developer experience for API developers? Like, that's for the front end, but the API, like the word is mobile, right? So you don't really want to do, you need APIs for them. So also we have, if we're still doing the microservice stuff, we're still building on a distributed system. And the more you distribute, the more complicated it gets, okay? This is actually a very good problem. The more microservices you have, the biggest problem you have. And however, it's actually a good way to scale, because the more microservices you have, the more developers you have, the faster you ship software, hopefully. So, yeah, coordination is the challenge. So, and all these tools, there's a big chunk of tools that came out. The service mesh, the distributed tracing, deployments, registries, a lot of things came out to help you manage this complication. All of those are operators tool, not developers tool. Like, those are operators. What about the devs? And there is very little developer-driven tool to build, manage, and scale microservices. So, yeah, when we founded Platformatic, we thought, how can we bring that joy of developing software back to API development? And, this is nice. Well, let me talk a little bit about Platformatic. At Platformatic, what we want to combine the best of both worlds, of what we've seen so far. We want to make you move very fast, but also go everywhere and move fast too. So we want to be both Rails and an SUV, both being on a train and an SUV at the same time. So we are helping developers get rid of the undifferentiated heavy lifting of building Node.js application. It's great, okay? What does this mean? Let me talk a little bit about this. Oh, by the way, it's all open source, so you can try it right now. So first of all, Platformatic is built on top of Fastify and Node.js. Yeah. And the first component that we have in Platformatic is Platformatic Service. So Platformatic Service allows you to set up, to create a Fastify instance, a Fastify API, with all the things already configured for you to be starting developing straight away. So it has metric support with Prometheus. It does it manages logs. It protects your event loop from trashing. This, by the way, is another talk, and I plan to do this at another conference very soon, because it's actually very important. Health checks, okay, also another very important things. OpenAPI, GraphQL. How do you do auth module reloading? This is actually a very important problem for development. TypeScript. Oh yeah, a lot of things. Okay. On top of that, we have built Platformatic DB, and a Platformatic DB allows you to quickly create a REST API CRUD, create, read, update, delete experience on top of both REST and GraphQL APIs for your SQL database. It's great. Okay. And it gives you more or less something that can reach you the 80% essentially very quickly of your application with, 5 minutes of work, and then allows you full customization and full extensibility with the use of Fastify plugins to get it done. Then we have also shipped something new just a few weeks ago called Platformatic Composer. Platformatic Composer allows you to create custom APIs by mixing and matching different endpoints. Okay, so you can just point them, mix them together, and you get something coherent. And it's great. It prevents API conflicts. It works very well, and provides you what it will call like BFF server out of the box. Try it out. It's actually very handy. We support OpenAPI by default, and we will work on GraphQL soon. The runtime is actually something even more interesting, which allows you to deploy multiple microservices within the same Node.js process. How? Well, we create a sort of virtual network within your Node.js process, and we avoid any actual I/O. Everything is distributed just by flowing objects and strings and streams in memory. It's great, works fantastic, and it allows you to develop things as their microservices, then decide, I just want to ship them side by side, my same process. Well, you can. And you can, if tomorrow you want to distribute them, you can distribute them. It's great. It works fantastic. And also, because we can do that, because we have the composer, we have the client, we have the runtime, we can actually create a dependency graph of your service. And we will do more of that soon. So you might want to check, but are we back to the application server model? We started from the application server model with Java. And in fact, that model was very fantastic. Was extremely good from a deployment perspective, because you can just move out a tarball, a zip file, and we have adopted a very similar model, but allows you to deploy on a modern service architecture, which is great. In fact, we can call this nano service. And this is more or less what an architecture for this can look like. So you have your auth service, and then you have your payment service, your metrics soft service, and so on and so forth. And as I said, all the routing between the microservices within runtime happens within the same process using something called request injection. So no HTTP calls are performed between services, but they are all running within the same in-memory process, and is compatible with fetch, the Node Core fetch too. It's great. And apart from that, if you really like that approach, we can even I will probably do some in-depth session on that in the future to cover it up in more detail, because it's actually a very interesting piece of technology. But it's all open source, so you can try it now. So let's do a very quick demo for this, and it's fantastic. Let's get this demo started. So first thing, let's create a folder for our movies API. We're going to create a simple thing to just, track our movies and quotes. So we go in movies, and then we do npm create platformatic, which is at latest, which is great. This install and create downloads and install everything. Here we go, and it's already installed, and we want to create Platformatic DB. And yes, we want a plugin, and no TypeScript yet. Sorry, we don't have much time. Port 3042. Let's skip that. And no, and no. Cool. Let me see one thing. Ooh. Yeah. So, okay. So what we do here is then we can do plt start to get our party started. Oh yeah, no table in the database. So what we do is plt db migration apply to apply our migration, which is our default migrations. And we can take a look at them here in this folder. We got migration do, which is a table, create a table movies, and undo, we drop that table. So now we can do start, and then we can open this up and says, hello, welcome to Platformatic DB. And we can take a look at our Swagger, OpenAPI definition, Swagger UI, and our graphical. So in Swagger, you can see that we have movies, get, post, put, get, put, delete for the single ID. It's great. So we can, for example, try to put a title here and try it out. And we can say Harry Potter, and here we go. We have saved Harry Potter. Now we can close this, we can run this thing. Cool. And we have saved Harry Potter. Now in graphical, what we can do, for example, is getting a movie with its ID and title. Here we go. So we got the movie with ID and title, run it, and we see that movie is Harry Potter, right? Something that it does out of the box, for example, is we could do a subscription for movie saved, and we can get the ID and title, and we run this. You see that it's getting there, and we can store, for example, Star Wars, and execute that. And now we got our thing updated. As you can see, it's it's just there. Okay, so we got our stuff done, and we got our data out. So what do we do next? Well, we can do a bunch of things. So what we can do, for example, is what we can do is we can get our we can add another migration. So we can do plt db migration create, and we can do, we go back here and we have two migrations, and here is create a quotes table, and here we go. So here we've got this integer primary key. Okay, this is SQLite, and then oh yeah, but this is, we want it to refer to a movie ID, integer not null, reference movie ID, movies ID. Compile is great. Okay, and then we want drop table quotes. Okay, so now we could do db migration apply, and if we go and reload our Swagger UI, we can now see, for example, that we can now see that we got our quotes as well, and you see that they have a relationship already set up, so we can get the quotes of a given movie. So maybe let's add one. So movies ID, this is a put, so we can actually post a new a quote. Okay, so we can post a quote here, and we can say, oh, we need to know which one was our movies. So we want Star Wars, which is 2. And so in our Swagger, we could say ID, we don't, try it out. So ID, we don't care, we don't need that. And so may the force be with you. And Ben Kenobi, and movie ID 2. So we could execute this, and here we go, and we have added it. And now I think I've added it twice. So here, what we can do, we could, for example, we could refresh this up, and we could ask for our quotes. And here we want the ID, the quote, and the author of that said quote. Here we go, and you can see that we have, sorry, I sent it twice, and we didn't do any unique validation, so we got 2 times the quote. Cool, it's pretty great, right? So what we have done so far, we have very quickly created an API, added relations, and we could even browse this thing via, for example, quotes ID here, and we can try this out and put, for example, a 1 here and execute it. And now you can see that we are getting the quote that we want. So this is quotes 1, but what we want is we want to get the quotes for a movie. So we want to get this quote for a movie. So we put 1 here, execute, and it's 2 maybe. It's 2. Here we go. And then here we go. We have all our quotes. So pretty cool, right? Okay. So what we can do now is we can add a few more things. We could, for example, add custom endpoints. So if we want to add custom endpoints, what we could do is app.get hello and return word and close it up. Now we save this, we refresh, and now we scroll and we have our row route, and we can try this. And this return word, as we would expect. It's pretty great, right? I love it. So now, next step, well, let's start showing up some of the other cool features about Platformatic. So these allow you to create APIs very quickly, customize them, and so on and so forth. One other thing that you could do is, for example, here, if you want to get all the titles, app.get titles, and we got that. And we can do const movies and await app.platformatic dot entities dot movie find, and we get all the movies and then return movies movie. And now we can refresh these up and we get the titles, and we can try execute this up, and we got our movies and the titles. This is also all complete auto-completion here, and if we get npm, if we get the modules installed, we could get full auto-completion on our code base, so which sounds pretty cool. So maybe I should have run npm install first, but let me show you in a second. So some other cool features that we could do, for example, is in our demo, in our system, is, let me kill this up. And some very cool demo is create a runtime-based application. So let's call it runtime. So we go inside runtime, and here I can do npm create Platformatic at latest to install that thing, and yay, we want to create runtime. We create in this folder, we pull our services inside services. Yeah, we skip that, and the first service that we're going to create, it's a famous Satoshi, and I'm just going to call it, instead I'm calling it the composer. Okay, and we want it to be a composer, port 3042, and we want another service, and we're calling this uncamped wizardry, and we are using a Platformatic service now, and no, and yeah, and no. And the first entry in the bonus part is specifying which one is the main entry point for our system, which is composer, and we know we are not going to deploy this stuff right now. Cool. So now what we could do, okay, this is finished in the meanwhile. So here, if I'm closing this and opening this up, I have, as I can see, I'm just showing you, I have full auto-completion via TypeScript, and it's completely done here and so on. So it's actually pretty great. And you can see here, everything is auto-completing for us. Pretty cool. Okay, so go back to our runtime. In the runtime, what I can also do is I could copy. Let's see these services. Oh, first of all, let me close this editor here. Okay, and in the runtime, what we could do to the services, and we could, for example, inside services, in camped withered, we have a route. Okay, so what we can do is Platformatic plt runtime start. Ouch. And I think there is a mistake in my config file. What? Oh, yeah, of course. So composer as a dependency to example, and it's not example. So we need to put here uncamped wizardry. Okay, and here it's fine, and we don't need that. It's pretty cool, right? It's just no origin, because we have the ID, and the ID is the same of the folder name. So because of that, everything can be completely automated, and we can avoid doing any lookup. So what we do now is we have our services and we have our composer, and let's run this. Oh, node plt runtime start, and did a mistake again. Uncamped with oh yeah, here it is. Great. Okay, so now we could run it, and now as you can see we have two things, and we have its foobar, which is our entry point, but if we can go in documentation, we see that we have defined one, and this is the composer. So what we could do is we could take our movies, cp-r movies, and copy it into runtime services movies. And it's going to take a while because this has all the dependencies. So now I can go here and now refresh this up, and we have movies and all the things. Okay. And now I could just go inside my composer and add one more service here, call it movies. And here we go. And now we could run it again. And magically here we get the root endpoint that we just added on one service and all the others of the other service. It's pretty cool, right? It's pretty cool. And look, it just works. So we have just composed all our two services together, just moved them around, and the system was able to turn them on and completely start them up without any specific issue, which is fantastic. Now, last thing that you could do with this kind of system is we could, for example, specify an API in uncamped wizardry to call the movies endpoint. Okay, let's say that we want to do all capital case titles. So here in uncamped wizardry, what we could do is push the services uncamped wizardry. What we could do is platformatic client. Oh, yeah, PLT client. Yay. And here we need to specify the schema of our service. So we want our movie, our movie app online. Okay, so let's do platformatic start here. Oh, PLT start. Yeah, great. And here we could take and here the documentation JSON. Oh yeah, and this is a client for our service already created for us. So if we go now here, we see that we have clients and we have a bunch of files that were created with us. This is our open API, and it has all our movies endpoint. It's pretty cool, right? So now inside our routes, what we could add, for example, is get all caps titles. So what we could do, const movies, await app, fastify dot client dot, let's see what it's written here. It's a client and it has get movies. So here we could do client get movies. Oh, it's there. Okay. And here we just want empty. We got all the movies. So we do titles and movies dot map title to uppercase. Okay, let's try and see if all of these work out. And plt, oh yeah, we need to go back to our main folder, runtime start. Ouch, I did, oh yes, as a known dependency client. So what you need to do here is you just need to go into this package name here and call it movies. This needs to match. So we do plt runtime start, and oh yeah, it's running. So we need to kill the other one in the same port. So we run this again, and we open it up. This is actually correct. Once we reload this, now we can see that we have all caps title. And all caps title, it's executing it, get us all the titles correctly. Now, funny stuff, let's take a look at our code. So in here, we have our client and our routes. So instead of doing that, we could just get the titles. So we could do titles, await, fastify, client, get titles. And instead of doing that, we could just do titles, and here it's a title, and we do title to uppercase. We stored this up, and the service was automatically reloaded, so everything is always fine, and we could just execute this again, and this is actually working. And we could even say, let's add plus 42, so just to show you that all of these is actually reloading correctly. Cool. So I hope I showed you how to use Platformatic, how to build APIs with Platformatic. There are a lot of features that we did not include, but in 20 minutes, I think we did quite a big of a cover. So yay. Well, wasn't it fantastic? Great. What we want to achieve is a model where our software run on your machine, our cloud, or your cloud. Oh, wait. What cloud? Do you have a cloud? Yes, we have Platformatic Cloud. It's free or starting from $4.99 for paid plans. You can try it out. It's a great way to deploy Node.js applications, so please check it out. It's also built per server, not per seat or application, so you can, I think you will, it's a very developer-friendly price point, so check it out. And yes, everything is available now. Visit us at platformatic.dev, and thank you. Bye-bye.